Today's video is going to show you how you can create this popular blurred text effect that's kind of going around the internet right now. Pretty simple process. I'm going to show you two different methods to make it happen. First thing we're going to do is create our text, and we've got a black background. I want to grab my text tool over here and type in some wording. So now I'm going to hit Control T or Edit, Free Transform. So I want to free transform and just kind of position this text where I want it. Now I'm going to actually click and drag the plus symbol, this layer over here, to duplicate it and turn one off, because this is for the other effect. You don't need to actually take this step. This is just so we have another layer to work on afterwards. But essentially, you've got two different ways we can blur this before we add in the color effect. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur Gallery, Field Blur. And it's going to ask me if I want to convert this to a smart object. I say yes. First thing you'll notice is we have this little pin here. I can click on that pin and blur it more or blur it less. Or if I want to get a slider where I'm not going to accidentally tip over from max to full, I can come up here and just use this slider here. I'm going to bring it down to 0 because I don't want any blur here. I'm going to move this over. I'm going to pop another one here, bring the blur down. But this time I'm going to go to the far corner, just kind of bring that up a bit. And if I don't want it to affect this letter C too much, I can click on it, bring that down, and just have it sort of blur the corner of that letter. I do the same in the opposite corner. And I can do this through various pieces of the text to create a really cool sort of effect. And then I come up here and click OK. We've got our first text layer, and I'm going to move this up. I'm going to activate the one we copied before because we're going to work on a different blur for this one, which is much simpler. I go to Filter, Blur Gallery, and Tilt Shift. I want to convert to a smart object, and I can move this tilt shift down and adjust these little handles here. I can even rotate if I want to. You can see how it blurs. It's a little bit touchy on this computer at the moment. You see how it starts to blur here. I can bring this in to increase the blur. So I can visually adjust these markers here to create a different kind of blur effect. I could even have it completely straight, just have the top and the bottom blurred. But for now, you can see how we can already get a pretty cool effect out of that. But if we're happy with that, we click OK. And already, that's a relatively cool effect as it is. But now we want to add in the color. So I'm going to click on the very top layer over here, and I'm going to click on the adjustment layer icon, come down to Gradient Map. Now at the moment, I've got my properties down here. I'm going to move them up, and it's kind of inverted that text because on the left here we've got white, and on the right we've got black. So what I'm actually going to do is open that up, and where the white is, I'm going to make that black yet again. So I click on this white pointer and I make it black. And at the very opposite side, I'm going to make this pointer here white. So we've basically got what we had before, but with a difference. Anything that's gray, we can now add a color to. So if I click in the middle, it's going to create more white, and it's kind of really emboldened that blur. But if I come down to the color, and because we're about halfway, I can still make this pretty full and grab like a blue color, and I get this really nifty blue glow effect. But what we can also do from there is when I click off a bit more, we can choose a different color. I can come here and choose purple. I can come to the other side here and choose yellow or something like that. I can even choose green. I might stick with the green. I think that looks the best so far. And as I move these back and forward, I can change where the effect takes place. So by moving the purple, it kind of brings it out a fair bit. I think that's a bit too far along. Bring that down and create this really cool effect. And you can do these with any colors you think are going to look good. And I click OK. Now the good thing about this is we have smart objects, so we can adjust these blurs if we're not happy. Like at the moment, these blurs might be a little bit too tight for what we want to do. I'm going to come down. I've got our bottom layer here, which this is a little trick I do. I just turn the layer on and off to see which one it is. I can come down to my smart filters and double click on Blur Gallery. And now I can see the effect take action with the color. So I can come in and I can increase the blur. I can again change the angle, bring that out or in. If I bring that out and increase the blur or even the distortion, We get some pretty nifty effects that way. It's a little bit over the top, but you make your adjustments and you got a pretty nifty effect there too. Same again with this particular layer. I come up to my blur gallery and I can actually increase the blur in some of these areas. And drag it in about, so I can move this through and see what kind of effect it has. I can pop that in the middle of the A if I want to. I can add another marker. And click OK. So I now have 2 layers. I can choose which one I want to use, but I just wanted to show you which one works best for both. But there's still a little bit more we can do. I'm just going to click both of these and move them down. So we can also introduce a noise effect with this. So let's zoom in on where it says more. We can go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and actually add a little bit of noise to this blur. We can tone it down a fair bit and just get a nice noisy effect, but there is an issue that it starts to sort of bleed into the white area. So what we can do before we do that is we can duplicate this layer and just sort of turn it off for now. I come back to the bottom layer down here, so we got, this is the same text here. I'm going to go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. I can add a little bit of noise to this. I can make Gaussian and get a bit of a noisy effect there. Click OK. And then I can reintroduce this layer. I can double click on it to bring up the blending options. The other option is to right click and just go to blending options. And where it says underlying layer, I can start to move this back and it will bring the white pretty solid. And I want to basically hold down Alt between these two and just drag it up a little bit. So now we have solid white over where it is lightest and a little bit of noise around the outside. So now on this top one, we've created a little bit of a noise effect. And you can do the same at the bottom. For now, I'm actually going to remove this one so we can focus on one at a time, because there is one final step I like to do. So I'm going to grab these 2 I've created, one with the noise and the one for the white, pop it in the center. And what you can do is also add a nice texture over the top just to kind of finish off the effect. I drag my texture in and you can see how it's turned purple because it's sitting underneath the gradient map. So I drag it up above the gradient map. I'm going to put it onto screen and I can tone down that fill a little bit. I would also just like to say this texture is from Texture Labs. So it's a YouTube channel called Texture Labs. They have some of the best Photoshop tutorials you will ever watch. So check them out. There's a link in the description. Also, they have a ton of royalty-free textures on their website. Again, link in the description. So shout out to them because they do an awesome job with what they do. But this adding a little texture over the top just gives it a nice finishing touch. So then we end up with this kind of nifty effect here. And at any point, we can add a bit more to it. One thing I will add before we finish up is that you can actually just grab your paintbrush, create a new layer, grab white, bring that opacity down, get a nice big fat brush, bring the hardness down, find a brush you think is going to be big. I've got the opacity nice and low, is I can start to add in bits and pieces like this. I can add it into the corners and create like a burnt kind of border effect around the outside, which matches. You may think this looks good, you may think it doesn't. I'll bring that opacity up a bit. And you can actually paint in with white and take advantage of that gradient map. And what's even more interesting is if you bring the fill down, it'll actually change those colors because it's sitting underneath the gradient map. Phase that purple out, bring it in, so to get the idea. So you can actually play around as well with other effects around the text itself. But for now, that is a nifty little text effect you can create in Photoshop. I hope you found that useful. I hope you found that video useful. I just think it's one of those really cool little things that you can play with. A few basic tools to get a really cool effect. So if you like the video, please consider giving it a like. Otherwise, I hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.